Hello and welcome to a two-part series of top 10 lists, or should I say lists, because only one of them is a top 10, and the one that I'm doing today is top worst games of all time. The only condition with this list is that I have to own the game, which means that if I don't own it or have never played it before, it doesn't count. I know that there's tons of games that I don't own that are just plain awful, but I probably don't own them for good reason. So without further ado, let's go on to worst game number 10. Number 10 is Aquaman for the Xbox. Now listen, there are people all over the internet that say that this is one of the worst games of all time. And quite honestly, I don't agree with that. The only reason this is on my list is because, quite frankly, I don't have all that much bad games. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have terrible games. But this one's not as terrible as people make it out to be. It's bad. Don't get me wrong. It's awful. The controls are bad. They spent all their money on the hair physics. The fighting engine is like really odd because you just go up to someone and you're just like, hey, I'm gonna fight you. And then they're just like, oh, it's Aquaman, I guess I better fight him. And then you fight someone. And you're locked onto someone until they're dead. Which means anyone else in the area can kill you. Which doesn't really happen because you have an insane amount of health. It's crazy. Number 9 is Cliffhanger for the Sega Genesis. This game is just weird. Someone watched the movie Cliffhanger and they thought, oh yeah, you know what, this would make a great video game. Let's turn it into a beat 'em up. And that's what they did. MageSoft came with Sony and they created a game for the Sega Genesis where you play as Sylvester Stallone on a cliffside and you're just beating up guys. It's really, really boring. And the controls are really, really bad. And not to mention the hit detection. Oh, the hit detection. Oh, and sometimes you'll be on an object and you won't be able to tell because it blends in with the environment, or the little thing that says, oh, this guy should be falling through something isn't there. So you can be floating in midair, or sometimes you can just fall through the ground. It's one of those games. Chucky Cheese party games. Now, theoretically, for $5, this game wouldn't be all that terrible. It's just a collection of cheap little party games that you get in a plug-in-and-play game, which is what it would have better been often as. The thing that really sets this apart as a terrible game is it's a party game meant for young kids, but it's single player. You can't have a player 2. And don't get, like, I beat the game. It's playable. I have everything unlocked in it. But there's nothing important about unlocking everything. All you really get is bobbleheads, toys, and items that don't really affect the gameplay at all. They're just there to look at. But since you're not going to be showing anyone, because it's a single-player game for small children, it doesn't really have much gratification in getting them all, I guess. Next game on the list is Tomorrow Never Dies 007 for the PS1. I picked this up for one reason, is at a thrift shop. For like $1. So I went home and played it, because I figured, hey, it's a 007 game. Here's my opinion on 007 games. It could be controversial, but here we go. 007 games aren't good. People go like, oh, GoldenEye 64 is my favorite game ever. And quite honestly, I can't disagree, because I've never played it. I don't own GoldenEye 64. All I own is the Wii remake, and that game's solid. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not on the standards of, let's say, Call of Duty or Medal of Honor. It's still fun. And quite frankly, that's the only good 007 game. The rest of them have broken controls, most of them made by EA. Here's what I feel like EA did with the 007 series. They experimented. They wanted to see what worked and what didn't, and this franchise of 007 games suffered because of it. With Tomorrow Never Dies for the PlayStation, they went with this weird third-person thing, but this was before analog controls were popular. So this was, let's say, awkward. It's like what I call Bubsy controls, where you choose what direction you want to go in, and then you go in that direction. It's not great, but it kind of works in Bubsy. Okay, that was a lie. It doesn't work in Bubsy. But the difference between why it's a little bit more tolerable in Bubsy and why it's a little bit less tolerable in this game is while Bubsy is a platformer where everything stands still because it was super cheap, this game is fast-paced. You're not supposed to be standing still trying to figure out where you're going, because people are shooting at you. And the computer can use your crappy little controls a lot easier than the player can. And because of this, you see the point. People shoot you before you can even figure out where they're coming from. MTV Celebrity Deathmatch. This game is just unplayable. I don't know about the PS2 and Xbox version, but what I have here and what I am talking about is the PS1 version, which, for starters, is rated T. The other one's rated M. Does that mean that they're better? Probably not. Does it mean a little bit more effort was put into them? Probably. This game is broken, to say the least. It's three-dimensional, so it's not like traditional fighting games at the time, so it's more like a wrestling game. Because kind of what it is, it's set in a little rink and everything. But the difference is that there's these weird items that come across the map, and you're supposed to go over, pick them up, and use them. However, they're pretty obsolete because you have to aim. And then this weird third-dimensional thing where you're stuck, like, using the D-pad to move and everything, it makes it really difficult to choose the aiming of where you want to throw it. And there's a time limit. And if you don't kill the other person by the end of the time limit, everyone dies. I found that while I played this game over the years, I've only managed to complete a match once or twice, because of the time limit. Number 5 on the list is Sonic 06. Some people may ask, hey, why isn't this higher up on the list? This game is awful. I saw this review on it, and this review said it was terrible, and the Grumps played it, but here's what my opinion on it is. It's a bad game, yes. It's broken, yes. Did I have fun with it? Oh, absolutely. This game is awful on its own. If you were to sit down, try to beat it, try to play it by yourself, it's horrendous. It would be a chore. But if you have, like, a buddy sitting next to you, pass the controller off to them, force them, see their reaction when they can't figure out how to play it, that's fun. This game makes reality fun, not make the video game fun. Now, this ain't going to be popular opinion. Quite frankly, no one will agree with this. But in my opinion, E.T. the Extraterrestrial isn't as terrible as people make it out to be. Okay, listen. There's a lot of people who are like 5 years old, 10 years old, who knows, 15-year-olds, that find a little emulator of E.T. the Extraterrestrial on the internet. They play it, and then they confirm, yes, this is the worst game ever. However, the odds of them actually playing it on the Atari is a little bit different. Because if you knew that the game's on the Atari, and you've played these games before, you would probably realize that most Atari games weren't as good as people think. Or at least remember. Like, if you were to play the arcade version of Pac-Man, you would realize that it's a lot different than the Atari version of Pac-Man. In fact, 100% different. Like, not even joking. This one list online, insert online HTTP website link, insert here. If you were to look on the worst list of all time lists, number 10 is Pac-Man for the Atari. But people are like, whoa, Pac-Man was a good game. And it was, the arcade version. The ports weren't any good, and that was what a lot of Atari was. E.T. dared to do something different. More of an open world adventure. And quite honestly, it tanked. This game isn't fun. It's broken. Getting out of pits? It's a chore, and it has nothing to do with E.T. But would I say it's the worst game ever? No. Number 3, my least favorite game as a kid. I'm not even joking. Blues Brothers 2000 for the Nintendo 64. Alright, I love the Nintendo 64. Donkey Kong 64, Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Yoshi Story 64s was great. It came out with some of my favorite games of all time and some of the best games of all time. But they were also known to have the worst games of all time. It's like literally 50-50. You were either going to be fantastic or you were going to be terrible. PlayStation was the opposite. PlayStation was always like, usually in the middle. Like, this game's decent. No, 64, it was great or it was bad. Blues Brothers 2000, it was bad. And you know, we all have those games as a kid where you can't beat it. It's like you're too young, your mind's not developed yet. You're just trying to beat a game, you can't do it. You're not designed for it yet. So you go back later, you play it when you're a little older, and then you get past the point. You get past the point because you're more mature. You've got more experience, more life lessons under your belt. Like, that's gonna help in a video game. But still, you still have those. Blues Brothers 2000, I went back and played it when I was older. Didn't get any farther. I was impressed with my kid's self for getting as far as I did. Because when I tried playing it less than a month ago, I couldn't do it. I couldn't beat it. It was hard. Number 2, Bubsy 3D. Now, this is another one of those games where it's flat out terrible. Yes, there's some reviews on it. Yeah. Make some opinions for yourself. That's why all of these games I own. I don't want to make an opinion of a game that I've never played before. Because who knows, it could be like Sonic 06. I had fun with Sonic 06. Is it on my list? Yeah, but it's not far on my list. Because I played it, and I managed to form my own opinion. Bubsy 3D, I played it, and it's not fun. Like, at all. The graphics are cheap. I understand why. It was that whole port thing. You heard it 1,000 times. I'm not gonna explain it again. But what I am gonna explain is that Bubsy's bad. Seen the cartoon? Then go watch the cartoon. Didn't think I had one, did? Bubsy controls. As I talked about earlier, some games have what I call Bubsy controls. That is, you choose the direction you want to go and then you go in it. And that's terrible for games like Tomorrow Never Dies, as I discussed earlier. And for here, it doesn't work at all either. In fact, it's really bad. This came out around the same time as like Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 is a good game. Couldn't have copied something. Controls. They only had one control stick. They managed to do it right. This one had 2. Couldn't have done that. You messed up, Bubsy. Number 1 worst game of all time. Superman 64. Why do you ask? Yes, I will tell you. I will tell you right now. Am I stalling to talk about it? Yes. Yes, but now I'm going to tell you. A lot of the games, as I said, Sonic Hedgehog, they're fun when you get a friend to play it with you. To share the experience, to laugh and make fun of it together. Superman 64 wasn't like that. Because here's why. The thing that separates it from other superhero bad games like Aquaman. Aquaman, you can progress. You can maybe get to level 2. Superman 64, can't get to level 2. I tried. Like, really hard. And Sean wins. Sean got the farthest. Let's go say that now. But I tried not even flying through the rings, flying next to the rings to see if I could even get to the end before time runs out. And you can't. I tried. I got about 12 seconds left to go when I finally made it to the exit. You know what that means? That means you can't just fly through the rings precisely. It means you gotta fly it through the rings without messing up at all. In this game, in case you didn't know, you can miss a couple rings. So you think. It actually gives you the chance to miss 5 rings and still be able to progress. But because you need that exact time, you can't. You can't miss a ring, because then you'll mess up the pattern. So that's my thoughts and opinions on the worst games of all time. Tune in some other time to see the best games. Bye.